Are you looking for world-class health and wellness advice combined with a dose of inspiration and spiritual encouragement? You've come to the right place. This is nourishment for body and soul. This is Manna, and I'm Dr. Turner. Welcome. Well, hello and welcome, Manna listeners. It's good to be with you guys again. I'm excited for our episode today. This is going to be unique. It's going to be different than any episode we've done thus far because it touches on a subject that I've not explored in depth, whether with you guys or even personally and professionally. I'm still exploring this topic. I'm still learning. And so I'm going to be learning as much as you are today. And I'm going to be asking questions kind of from the same point I think most of you are, which is of curiosity, perhaps a little skepticism, but interest and enthusiasm to pursue the medical product that we're going to talk about today in greater detail. So I welcome Dr. Michael Stewart and Isaac Foster. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. It's good to have you on today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Turner.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll just give you guys a background. The topic for today is CBD, is medical cannabis, is hemp plants, right? Like all of this is sort of an amorphous concept in my mind and probably in your mind. And we want to get to the bottom of that today. What can this do for you? Is there any value? Is it just another way for people to peddle marijuana? Where does this stand? Does it have a medical role? What is its medical role? How does it do its medical job, right? Those are the questions I want to answer. These gentlemen are here to help us figure that out today. So it's good to see them. Dr. Michael Stewart, I'm going to read his bio, has been a licensed physician for over 30 years and is board certified in family medical practice, a specialist in HIV treatment, palliative care, cannabinoid medicine, and is a member of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. He previously owned and operated the largest HIV care practice in a 5-state region and has held a medical director position in the areas of hospice and home health care. Dr. Stewart has been on multiple pharmaceutical advisory boards. We welcome you, Dr. Mike. Fantastic. Isaac Foster is the CEO of Endourage. Isaac has 20 plus years scaling companies, including 5 years in cannabis. He has been the managing partner, chief operating officer, or chief financial officer of 9 startups in the industries of defense technology, telecommunications, financial services, consumer services, and now cannabis and hemp. He has years of experience and expertise as an investment banker in healthcare and tech. All right, fantastic. We welcome you, Isaac.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, let's jump right into this. My question would be, what does the cannabis plant, what we commonly know as marijuana or hemp, and a lot of people aren't even sure on the difference of that, but basically what does this plant have to do with medicine? How does this relate to medicine? If we had a Venn diagram and we had a circle for the, cannabis plant, we had a circle for productive patient-centered medical care, how does it even relate the one to the other? Let's begin there.
I think I'm going to have Isaac. This is mostly actually a legal question as opposed to a medical question, because we want to go through the difference between cannabis, hemp, marijuana, and CBD. I think we also want to talk about THC there too. And what we come down to really is legal as opposed to medical. And I can jump in, but I think Isaac is more familiar with the details.
Okay.
So I guess to start, cannabis, when we use that word, we're actually referencing the Latin name, Cannabis sativa L. Interestingly, the word sativa means cultivated. It doesn't mean daytime. And this plant is one of the first plants that was cultivated by human beings. So over 12,000 years ago, it was brought out of the wild and was domesticated. Now, in our legal structure, which is what Michael is referring to, our government has now taken cannabis, that's the top level, and then divided it into 2 separate legal categories. One is called marijuana, and we're familiar with that. And that variety is really focused on THC. And then hemp is the other variety, and hemp has limitations on how much THC it can have. It doesn't have 0, it just has very little in it. And so I think that's what causes a lot of confusion for people. In terms of the plant, and Michael can expand on this some more, and its relationship to medicine, It has been cultivated since its beginnings for medical use. It is an interesting plant in that it literally has hundreds of active ingredients in it. All of them do very different things. And what's happened over time, as humans have bred the plant, they have chosen certain varieties of the plant for their medical application. Now, today in our culture, we're much more familiar with THC and its ability to get people high, but that's really just one of at least 400 active ingredients in the plant. And while all the focus is on THC, when you're looking at medical use, it's actually the other 399 ingredients have as much medicinal impact as THC. And so you really don't need to focus on THC, though we do, as a society.
From a medical standpoint, the molecules are exactly the same. So whether I'm dealing with marijuana or hemp, I'm dealing with the molecules in the cannabis plant. Now, when you're talking about CBD, what is CBD? CBD is one of the 400 molecules that is in the cannabis plant. And so if you're buying something that says CBD from the store, you're most likely buying a CBD isolate. And so what has happened is somebody's taken the cannabis plant, they've isolated out the CBD, so that's all that's left there, that one component, and then they concentrate that one component. Some other people will, try to utilize the whole plant. We can talk about that a little bit more in the future about how successful they are in doing that. But CBD is just one part of the whole plant, as opposed to.
Yeah. Okay, so let me jump in and just summarize what I think I hear you guys saying, which is very helpful overview for me as well. So this is fantastic. So at the very top level, we have the cannabis plant. It's been around for thousands of years. Turns out to have a lot of medicinal value. We've known this. We've figured it out. We've cultivated it.
Perfect.
There are about 400, let's just put a number on it, active ingredients in this plant that do things in the human body. Mm-hmm. And now, depending on the ratio of certain active ingredients, we got some subcategories. If it has more than a certain amount of THC, we got a subcategory over here we call marijuana. If it's got less than a certain amount of one of those molecules, aka THC, if it's got less, we call it hemp. But THC is just one of the 400, and we can have varieties with different ratios of all the other 399. Another one of those 399 is CBD, as you're saying, but that still leaves 398 molecules that are in there healthy for the human body. Right? Okay. Fantastic.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish I would have said it that way.
Fantastic. Well, that's all right. So we're understanding each other. This is exciting. Okay. So let's talk about what do the 398 or even the full 400, what do these molecules do that's helpful from a medicinal perspective for the human body? And I'll just give you a little preface and backstory. When the whole idea of medical cannabis came out, I wasn't excited about it. I've never used a psychoactive drug in my life. I've never been drunk or intoxicated in my life. I think it's important to keep a sound mind and not have anything that would be cognitively or perceptually impairing. I would never recommend that. And so I felt like it was quite a negative concept that all of a sudden doctors and medicine were being drawn into the realm of basically drug use, as far as I was concerned. So that was the connotation that I had initially. Then I started to get a little open mind about CBD products, that they weren't so psychoactive, they had medical use, et cetera. So that's where I'm coming from. But what can these things do, any of these molecules, in alone or in combination, what can they do healthy for the human body?
Well, there's a whole lot to unpack in there. And I think that the first place that we would want to go there is to talk about the endocannabinoid system in the human body. Endo meaning It is endogenous. It is something from ourselves. Cannabinoid, because we discovered that the cannabis plant interacted with this system before we discovered the system itself. And so the endocannabinoid system in the human body is the master regulator of the human body. Consider it kind of like a smart thermostat system in your house. So if you're a deer grazing in a field and a cougar comes by and wants to graze as well, but on you, if that deer is successful in getting away, finds another field, in about 10 minutes, it goes back to its natural state of being. The system in our bodies that was responsible for bringing us back to our natural state of being when we're under stress is the endocannabinoid system. So it's simplistically, it's a three-part system. It has ligands, receptors, and enzymes. the ligands, or in this case, the endocannabinoids, or the cannabinoid-like medicines that we produce in our own body naturally, or they could be phytocannabinoids from plants or synthetic ones as a medicine. Those are the ligands. Then we have receptors in our body, primarily the CB1 and CB2 receptors, but there are a lot of other receptors that are involved. So these ligands interact with the receptors, and then we have enzymes that break down the ligands so that they don't continue acting with the receptors. And at any time, we could have, a problem with the receptors, not enough or too many. We could have a problem with the ligands, not producing enough or producing too many, and we could have issues with the enzymes that break them down. But this is the system that maintains homeostasis in our body. And so if it's operating well, anytime we're under a stress, it will bring us back, to homeostasis. Now, the problem that we have with this is that it is designed to be self-regulating. When we have an appropriate diet, when we're doing voluntary exercise, and we're taking care of ourselves with things like yoga and meditation, our endocannabinoid system is in balance. Omega-3, 6 fatty acids, those ratios are important as well. But as you know, in Western society, we don't take care of ourselves quite as well as we could. And that's where the phytocannabinoids come in. So phytocannabinoids will interact with our endocannabinoid system. And when we're under prolonged periods of stress, and our endocannabinoid system becomes a little bit unresponsive, these phytocannabinoids come in and they actually upregulate our number of naturally occurring endocannabinoid receptors. So they make our endocannabinoid system kind of more receptive, and exactly in the places where our body thinks it needs to go. And this is why in small doses, when we're using cannabinoid medicines, and hemp-based ones in particular, but they will balance the body's underlying endocannabinoid system, and in many ways act much more like a nutrient than they do a medicine. So for example, if you're out on your boat for a long time and you forget to bring some oranges or vitamin C along and you get scurvy, well, you could certainly treat the joint aches and pains with an anti-inflammatory, and it may take care of the joint aches and pains, but it's not going to go after the underlying problem, and that is that you need some vitamin C. You can give somebody a small amount of vitamin C, and the scurvy will go away because you've given the body the nutrients it needs. But you could also use vitamin C as an anti-inflammatory. I don't know if you're aware, we can use that in the intensive care unit with people who are septic. We have to use it IV, and we have to go into high doses. So 150 milligrams won't do it. You're probably going to use 50 grams or sometimes even more. And so we don't use it as an anti-inflammatory, but it is a good anti-inflammatory. So in many ways, the cannabinoid-based medicines in low doses will be balancing to the body, acting much more like a nutrient. And then in higher doses, we get into really the mix of what's in that cannabis plant, and we get into the magic of the terpenes. And they're an entirely another molecule aside from the cannabinoids. They give the plant its aroma, and they have incredible medicinal value. And, to pick one, for example, somebody who has some long COVID, for example, and they're suffering cognition issues, they have brain fog. We're going to go in and balance their endocannabinoid system, and then our magic is going to be in the terpenes. One in particular is limonene, that is in our formula C, and that's going to help with brain inflammation. Another one, pinene, is going to help with the cognition, help increase your ability to remember things. So this plant interacts in many different ways. And I ought to pause here, because there's a lot of information. Let's see if we can digest that a little bit.
Phenomenal. So the endocannabinoid system, you've been saying, has some different parts to it, things that bind, receptors for things that bind, enzymes, etc. But the point behind it all is to bring us back to a settled state after a stress. What's interesting is I never learned about this in medical school. I learned about other systems in our body to bring us to a settled state after stress, right? But I like neurotransmitters and such, and homeostasis for your adrenals and your thyroids and such. But I never heard about endocannabinoid systems and what receptors there are and what molecules. Why was that? Why did we not hear anything about it?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. It was actually discovered while I was in medical school. And there is a book out there, if you're really interested in doing a deep dive, called The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And that book has a bond. If you find an error in the book, they have a $100,000 bond. So I'm pretty confident the information in that book is accurate. It's been around for a long time. Many editions are out there. But cannabis was removed from the physician's toolbox for reasons outside of its safety and outside of its medicinal value. There's a lot to be said that there was an invention called a decorticator that was going to allow hemp to be used for its fiber content in ways that would replace a lot of textile and paper industry people, and they weren't very happy about it. There were some people that were moving over to petroleum-based medicines and textiles. And so the reason why cannabis was removed really had nothing to do with medicine. It had to do with economics and politics. In other words, it was a lot.
Okay. Fascinating. As such things happen at times, it's extraordinary. It's sad. It's ironic at times, the progress of history. And sometimes the best and greatest ideas are discarded, laid aside permanently or for a period of time based on undue considerations, whether political, economic, corrupt, etc.
Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, our country was in essence hijacked by about a half dozen alpha males at around the turn of the century. And we went down some paths that might have been different if that had not happened. And I think cannabis is one of those areas that might have been different if that had not happened. I don't know if I'm being politically correct or not.
That's all right. I want you to speak freely. I appreciate the insight. Let's bounce over to Isaac and let's key in on this, what I would consider your signature product, for at least signature interest on my side, which is your Formula C representing COVID. I've been treating COVID since the inception of it. I'm always looking for ways to help my patients who are struggling with COVID. Typical symptoms for them would be poor energy, brain fog. Those are common. And then other things kick in off of that, sometimes pain and such. Tell us about the product C. What was the process of creating this product, I guess? What was in the R&D, the inception of it, and then what's the punchline of how it can be successful for people with long COVID or long vaccine, I might imagine?
So the origin story is actually quite interesting. We had started our company in 2019, and we were actually first focused on addiction. And we had a human clinical trial set up that was about to start recruiting, and then the world shut down for COVID-19. At that time, Michael called me and he said, "Hey, I'm an HIV expert, right?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, HIV is an RNA virus, COVID's an RNA virus, and I'm getting calls to go suit up to help with the pandemic. So I can't be in a startup anymore." And so we were like, okay, I understand. How can we be upset, right? There's a pandemic, the world's shutting down. So Michael, who was living in Colorado at the time, gave up his home here, moved back to Palm Springs, California, and started getting ready to go into a COVID ER. And now at that time, part of his preparation was he had to do continuing medical education classes on COVID. And he ran into a treasure trove of research that had been done on SARS, the earlier outbreaks, with cannabis. And so 2 weeks later, my phone, I see it's Michael. I answer the phone. "Michael, hi, how are you? What's going on?" He's like, "I know you're not going to believe me." I was like, "What do you mean I'm not going to?" He's like, "I've been doing all this research, and I think that I have a solution for COVID," right? This was before we were talking about vaccines. This was before any of this was out. And I said, "I don't believe you."
Of course.
Like, that's way too convenient of a story. I said, "You've got to write this down. Like, you've got to write out your thesis. You have to talk about everything that's going on. Because if I just call people and say, 'Oh yeah, we're, a cannabis company and we have a solution for COVID,' they're just going to laugh at me." So he wrote down the thesis. We started sharing it with people. It got a lot of traction. And then Michael created a formulation based on the thesis. Now, again, when we say there's these 400 ingredients in the plant, he didn't throw all 400 in the plant. He picked very specific ones because of his understanding from doing the research on SARS, because he knew what was causing the cytokine storm and which specific active ingredients would be helpful in attenuating it.
Mm.
So he wrote that thesis. We made batches of the product. We tried them with several people until we got to our final formulation that seemed to be really working well. And then the government said, we won't let anybody do research on COVID because that would cause vaccine hesitance. Because we had reached out to the Institutional Review Board and we were like, hey, we've got a COVID solution. And they said, no, you don't. And so we said,
terrible,
okay.
reprehensible, immoral, inexcusable, etc., and so forth. But carry on. Yeah.
So this was about June. And so we're sitting here, we're like, we think we have a solution for COVID. What are we going to do? How can we do anything? And we're like, we can't go into prevention. We can't go to intervention. And we're kind of stuck there. We got really lucky. Right about that time, one of our staff members got a call from somebody who said, have you heard of COVID long haulers? And we were like, no, what's a COVID long hauler? And then we got connected to one of them. And it was actually Lisa in Utah. She's actually pretty famous as a long COVID person. And we got on a video call with her and she was going a mile a minute. She's showing us like she had just walked out of the pharmacy. She had a bag full of drugs. And she was like, she started to explain long COVID to us. Mm-hmm. And so she said, and the main problem was none of our doctors believe us. And so what we said, you know what? Dr. Mike's a doctor. He's an RNA specialist. He just did all this work. He can't be your doctor, but we'll make him available so you can ask doctors questions. And we did a series over 10 weeks of webinars for these long haulers. During that process, some of them it wasn't like an infomercial. We weren't trying to sell our product, but we disclosed we had been doing it. And so some of them bought it. And then in December of that year, we did a survey just to see how it was going. And we saw phenomenal results in these patients. Yeah. Many of them over several months had completely resolved their symptoms. Whoa. And so we thought, wow, we might have something here. And so since we hadn't been able to restart the addiction trial because the world was still shut down, yeah, we then created a long COVID human clinical trial, which the IRB did accept. So they said, yes, you can study post-COVID infection. That's fine. Mm-hmm. And so we collaborated with some of the largest long COVID research organizations in the country. They helped us design the trial. What we did was study the 9 most common long COVID symptoms against our product, because as Michael was saying, the endocannabinoid system, when we say it's the master regulator, it's like a smart thermostat. It is. And so if you think of your home, right, you're trying to keep it at 72 degrees and you've got an air conditioner, you've got a heater, and you've got some windows and you got some insulation. You can get the most expensive air conditioner in the world and the most expensive heater in the world. But if you don't have the $100 thermostat on the wall, your house is not going to be 72 degrees, right? And so we were seeing these long COVID patients that had all of these symptoms in all different directions. And Michael's thesis was, you just need a thermostat that's set up for your system. And this will all come into your body, will do the rest.
Yeah, the thermostat broken. What a surprise.
And I'm intrigued. I'm loving this idea. Keep going. Okay.
And so to prove that it was the endocannabinoid system and that working with one system could resolve all different types of problems, we tracked the top 9 long COVID symptoms at that time. They were the 9 that were highlighted by WHO, by CDC. Everybody agreed. These are the top 9. And so we're going to see, can we attenuate more than one of them? It was a study that was really only designed to get a signal, right? A proof of concept so that we could do a second study. But when we finished the study, we actually hit statistical significance on 4 of the 9, and we improved all 9 over the course of the study. Yeah. And so we thought, this works.
Absolutely. Yeah. Phenomenal. Were you going to say one more thing? Go ahead.
And so we after we had the study results, again, we weren't expecting statistical significance on anything. When we got it, we were like, wow. So we went through the process of getting published, which as first-time publishers is nail biting. And that's actually where all my hair got gray. Right. Because it's a long process that you don't actually have any visibility into, because they're going through all of your data, right? And they're verifying that your conclusions are accurate. so that they
Right.
can publish in a peer-reviewed medical journal.
Right.
And then we did publish it, and it is published. We also published Michael's thesis, and since then we've done pilot studies with some of the major long COVID centers in the country. And
Wow. I'm very intrigued. Please send over the citations. I know some of our listeners might want to follow that up. If there's a link they can click, go read the original thesis, go read the article in PubMed somewhere, etc. But that's a phenomenal origin story. I'm very intrigued. So, Michael, what were some of those top ingredients? You kind of picked some of your all-star ingredients from the cannabis plant you mentioned towards fighting COVID. What were, let's say, some of your top ones that you picked and why?
Oh, the terpenes and cannabinoids that I love.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we certainly do love the CBD. That's the buzzword that everybody wants to hear. And we do have that in our product. It is a great anti-inflammatory, has a lot of other things that are helpful. We do also need THC. So even though our CBD to THC ratio, which is what lets you know whether or not this is going to create euphoria or intoxication, it's not the amount of THC, it's the CBD to THC ratio. We don't create euphoria or intoxication. But I love having the THC on board. A little CBG is a great thing as well. But when we're talking about long COVID, I think my real significant players, number one, it's a toss-up between beta-caryophyllene and limonene as far as terpenes go. And the beta-caryophyllene is extremely important just in helping with our overall sense of well-being. I think it's one of the reasons why we were able to triple people's quality of life scores during the study that we did. And the terpene limonene, which will help with brain inflammation, really important in long COVID because these folks are having brain fog and cognitive, difficulties. And then the pinene itself, even though it does help with the inflammation to a degree, but it is more along the lines of cognition, helping that thought process go. So if, there are certainly chemovars or strains of the cannabis plant that can make you forget, but there are also strains that can help you remember. And so we include some of that terpene pinene in there. You offset it with a little bit of linalool, which is very calming. It's also found in the lavender plant. And let's see, if I had to pick another terpene here, I think I would go after myrcene for its calming as well as its anti-inflammatory effects. Those would probably be my major heavy lifters, although everything works together synergistically.
Okay. Understood. So I see some ingredients in there targeting inflammation, targeting brain fog symptoms, I guess, as we might describe it.
As I think you know what this is all about. It's about mitochondrial dysfunction and inflammation.
Yes, exactly.
And
absolutely.
So when we support that, we just do so much. And that's really what I'm going after from the medicinal sides. But the majority of the heavy lifting that we do here, honestly, is we support the master regulator in the human body. So no matter what you're doing as a clinician, if I support the endocannabinoid system, anything you are doing is going to be done more effectively and better. It just is the way the body works. When you let the body correct itself, it does so with innate wisdom. And that's what we're doing. We are supporting the master regulator in the human body and allowing it to do its job.
Okay. I love the concept, absolutely. And I can't wait to start bringing it in.
Here's the real thing. We didn't just study long COVID, by the way. We studied chronic disease. Because in the chronic disease state, I can pretty well guarantee you that the endocannabinoid system is at least stressed if it is not dysfunctional. Because this system just wasn't designed to be stressed 24/7. And how many people put their cell phones on their body when they're awake and have it next to their head when they're asleep? That thing might as well be a cougar sitting next to you, ready to grab you by the, never mind, it could grab you wherever, but it's going to create a certain level of cognitive dissonance because you're always a little concerned that cell phone might ring. And right now, whether we like it or not, mainstream media is scaring us to death. And we have the ability to help bring that system that is under stress from our day-to-day lives back into balance. And so in chronic disease management, supporting the endocannabinoid system is incredibly important. And we just don't seem to do it in the natural ways. This is what all of our functional medicine docs are doing. And, you know, when you're treating long COVID, don't you start asking people about what they're putting in their mouths? And you're advising them to drop those refined sugars and to make sure their omega-3 to 6 fatty acid ratios are balanced. And, you know, what we're doing is supporting the endocannabinoid system when you're doing that, and we're going to do it through the phytocannabinoids, and that is going to make everything else you're doing as a practitioner more effective.
Do you see this as for example, short-term curative problem? We got the thermostat off, our endocannabinoid system's been under stress, we're dysfunctional, and we use this product effectively to reset things over 4-8 weeks, something like that. And then one can go off of it and one is reset and doing stable. Is that a concept, or does someone, let's say, who has chronic disease need to be on this continually the rest of their lives? What's the outlook there?
Well, if the only thing you do is to take Formula C, will you need to take it in perpetuity? And my answer to that is probably if you have changed nothing else. But if you take Formula C and we help you get back into balance, and you then, now that you're in balance and can actually do some things, you do start to address your habits that were not supporting your system naturally, and you make some changes with the toxins you're putting in and put some nutrients into your body and do some voluntary exercise, then we're very hopeful that you will eventually support your endocannabinoid system in a natural way. But for those of us who don't do it, and I'm pretty good with my diet, and I do move. I've got some orthopedic issues, so I take our products for the anti-inflammatory qualities, but I also support my endocannabinoid system with them as if though it's a vitamin. And I just have to, I do meditate and I do my voluntary exercise, but apparently it's not enough. I just need a little bit of extra help. And so I will probably take these in perpetuity until I find something in my natural diet that's better. I still do have some room to move on my refined sugars and stuff like that. And I know they're not good for me, but it is the holidays, and, you know, I like Halloween food, and I do eat candy once in a while. So if you are willing to make the changes in your lifestyle that got you in the position that you're in with a chronic disease, you won't need to take it. But if you don't, you know, don't fix the thing, we can still help you. We can give you support, but we can't fix your bad diet.
Okay. And would you say that chronic C or your product C is good for chronic disease as well? Or apart from COVID, if you have a chronic disease patient, is there a different product of yours that one should consider?
Well, we formulated Formula C specifically for long COVID. And there were some things in particular that I heard from long COVID people that I don't hear as much from other chronic disease folks, like brain fog.
Yeah.
So the brain fog, that cognition stuff, and the real fatigue that people were having, I really did amp up Formula C in the limonene and in the, the other anti-inflammatories. So bring me back to your exact question. I'll see if I can answer it.
Yeah. So let's say someone doesn't have COVID nor vaccine problems. They've just got chronic disease, as you mentioned.
Right.
What's the best product of yours that you'd
Formula C will do that for them. Then we do have other targeted formulations. And for example, while they will all balance the endocannabinoid system, we have a formulation that is really targeted for people that have increased levels of anxiety. And that product can be used as needed, or it can be used as a daily product to balance the endocannabinoid system. Sometimes people have issues with depression that don't have anxiety as well. And so we have a targeted formulation that would be a little better for depression without anxiety. For those folks who have like myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, That's a real tough one for us to get people to move. But we do have a formulation that is working very well in that. It is even richer in terpenes than most of our other formulations are. That formulation is called Formula ME for myalgic encephalomyelitis. And we're hoping to do some additional work in the future with the Bateman Horn Center on that. But depending upon the chronic disease that you have, all of our products are going to balance the endocannabinoid system. And then if you have something else in addition to that, you have difficulty sleeping, or you have problems with depression or problems with anxiety, ADHD, we have specific formulations that you would use for that. Does that make sense? So if you have a chronic disease and you have no other symptom whatsoever, you know, all of our products will balance the endocannabinoid system, but most people will say, yeah, if I had to pick one or the other, I'm a little more anxious than I am depressed, or I'm a little more depressed than anxious.
I see. Fantastic. And then let's go back to you, Isaac, and we'll probably wrap up on this note. Tell us a bit about the company. What makes your product stand apart from others? What do you consider your unique selling proposition? And what makes you guys market leaders, I guess, in this area?
So I don't actually know of another company like us. There are thousands of CBD companies. There's thousands of marijuana product companies. But we talk a lot, as you said, about the promise of cannabis medicinally. While the products today that are mostly in the market are really recreational, right? They're consumer products. Nobody's done any human clinical trial. Nobody spent any time trying to put together specific combinations of the actives. And that's really what we're doing. We're taking a true biotech approach, which is understanding the active ingredients in the plant, understanding the target medical indication, and then really customizing combinations, because it's not true that you should just shotgun it, right? Because, for example, there are things that will make you anxious. And so they're very stimulating. That's not good for everybody. And so you really need to be careful which products you're using, which active ingredients you're using for a medical condition that you don't have the same concerns with if it's recreational. So as we did with Formula C, where we made a formulation, we did a human clinical trial, we published the results, and now we work with doctors who treat long COVID patients. I think that's the easiest way to discriminate us in terms of our mission. In terms of our products, what we'll tell anybody, all of our products have long labels on them, right? Yeah. Where we detail all of the active ingredients. So which ones of the 400 that we're focusing on are on the label of the bottle, right? So if you're saying, well, how is this different from this other product? It's easy. Take our label. If you can find another product that has even the same active ingredients, even in different ratios, now you can say, well, maybe this, maybe that. But what you know what you're going to find. It's the back of the label is going to say X amount of milligrams of CBD on it, and that's it. And you have no idea what else is in there. That product was not studied in a patient population, and I think the simplest way to think about it is, if your doctor recommends a multivitamin for you, right? And a very specific one, I want you to take this one because it's got this, and this in it. And you look at the label and you see it says vitamin C on it. You go, oh, okay. And then you say, doctor, I went to the store and I found a vitamin C thing. And he said, I didn't ask you to get vitamin C. I asked you to get this multivitamin because it has all these different ingredients in it, and I need you to have all of them.
Yeah.
That's the difference between us. If anybody's ever confused, simply look at our label, look at the label at the product that you think is the same as ours. If the label's not the same, it's not the same product.
I see.
There
are a lot of products you're saying that are just CBD focused, but you are all the other 399 molecules, specific ratios, specific dosages clearly on your label, not to mention this specific ratio has been tested in patients with actual doctors and scientists and data and feedback and statistics, et cetera.
Indeed.
Which makes it unique. Okay, I'm with you. You were saying, Dr. Mike, sorry to jump in.
Oh, this, what was I saying on that one? I have to, well, there were two things. Let me see. One is we are taking Formula C down the FDA pathway, botanical pathway. So soon we will be able to tell people, on our website what it's for. And we will be able to continue the over-the-counter sales while Formula C is going through FDA approval to be a drug. In addition to that, what's really important to me is the way in which we produce our products. We're able to maintain the concentration and the integrity of these terpenes in a way that other people do not, and I think they don't because they can't. Our producer is able to produce wet flower with a non-toxic solvent using ambient pressures and ambient temperatures. And we don't use biomass, we only use flower. And so the integrity and the concentration of our terpenes, I just don't think anybody else can do it right now. We're just different. We keep this more like Mother Nature made it than anyone else I know. And if you can find someone that's doing a better job, introduce me because I want to meet them.
Sure. Hey, I appreciate your commitment to excellence and uniqueness in your product. That's fantastic, and your confidence in it. Yeah, why not make the best thing, make it happen, bring together the resources and stand behind it and challenge all comers.
One of the things we do at Endourage here is we support practitioners that are interested in going down the cannabinoid route, and so keep my number handy if you have questions or concerns about cannabinoid medicines. I am there to steward and foster this plant back into our experience.
Okay, phenomenal. You're doing the medical field a favor in that sense, I would say, truly. Not to overstate it, but yeah, if this was taken away from us X number of decades ago for some reasons that didn't actually have to do with patient care, we need to bring it back. We need to be patient focused on what we're doing. If there's some natural, relatively inexpensive way to help my patient, I will always take that over the pharmaceutical way that's, overhyped and overexpensive and has unstudied side effects, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd love for more physicians to become aware of that. Did you want to say any final things, Mike?
Oh, I would just say, wait until you have a patient that comes in with fibromyalgia, irritable bowel, and migraine headaches, and it winds up being an endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. You give them any one of our products, just a couple days on Formula C, they'll come back and you are their best friend for life.
Wow, love it. Okay, I can't wait to take you up on that. I absolutely do have those patients. Isaac, any last things you want to say?
Just thank you so much, Dr. Turner. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today and doing a deeper dive and perhaps helping your audience understand CBD is just one word, and it's not the whole portfolio that the plant has to offer.
Yeah, very insightful. It's been a very insightful discussion, truly, and it's going to make some changes for me, my patients, my practice, all the people listening to this podcast today, tomorrow, a year from now. I want the word to get out. I think what you guys are doing is commendable and really being done in a outstandingly professional, upstanding fashion from everything. So thank you for that. It's good to have you today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day and happy holiday season.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
This wraps up another edition of Manna. I enjoyed our time together, and I hope that this has inspired you towards a healthy and happy life. Be blessed.